Hello, my name is Angela Henderson. I'm going to talk about a project I'm working on which looks at the use of psychotropic drugs for adults with learning disabilities. Psychotropic drugs are groups of drugs that affect people's minds, emotions or behaviour. These drugs can be used to help people with mental health problems. In this study, we're going to look at how these drugs are used for adults with learning disabilities in Scotland. We're doing this by analysing information that has been collected by doctors and nurses. We have this information at 3 points in time over a 10 to 12 year period. We wanted to find out if there had been any changes in the number of people who are prescribed these drugs during this time. So why are we interested in this? While psychotropic drugs can be really useful in helping people with mental health problems, they can also have serious side effects. The use of these medications needs to be carefully reviewed and monitored. There has been concern that these drugs are used too often for people with learning disabilities, and in many cases not for the reasons that they were licensed for. Lots of studies have reported that they are used to manage the behaviour of some people with learning disabilities. So what did we find out? Well, we found out that at the beginning of the study, 49% of people who agreed to take part were prescribed at least one psychotropic drug. However, only 41% of the population had a diagnosed mental health problem. When we looked at the types of drugs that people were being prescribed, we found that almost a quarter of the population were being prescribed an antipsychotic medication. However, only a quarter of those prescribed an antipsychotic medication were assessed as having a psychotic illness. We also found that just under a half of those who were prescribed an antipsychotic medication were assessed as having problem behaviours. A lot of other studies have shown similar findings. When we looked at other information about drug prescribing from the same health board area in 2014, which was between 10 and 12 years after the first set of information, we found that there had been a decline in the number of adults with learning disabilities who were prescribed an antipsychotic medication, down to 16%. To get an accurate picture of changes in prescribing practice, it is important to look at this information for the same group of people across the same period of time. Once we had linked the information we had across all time points, we were able to look at the drugs that were prescribed to the same group of 368 people. This data showed a very different picture. We found that antipsychotic prescriptions for this group had actually increased over time from 21% to almost 27%. We also found that the number of people who were prescribed antidepressants had risen by a lot, from 11% of the population up to 25% of the population. In summary, when we look at the whole population, the information we have shows that there has been a decline in the rate of prescribing of antipsychotic medication. However, if you follow the same group of people through time and look at the rates of prescribing for this group, the data shows an increase in the rate of antipsychotic prescribing and a very steep rise in the number of people taking antidepressants as well as hypnotics and anxiolytics. We think that these patterns indicate the following. Firstly, that the number of people who are newly given antipsychotic drugs by doctors is falling. However, in the case of people who are already taking antipsychotic medications, this group are unlikely to have their medications withdrawn. Further work needs to be undertaken to understand the factors associated with the steep rise in prescribing of antidepressants. Thank you.